workshop. So today we have an event with Amy Scher and Mark Williams, who wrote the book Out in the World. Amy Scher is the best-selling author of 5 books that help people become their happiest, healthiest, and most creative selves. As a longtime travel writer, she writes about how exploring our own neighborhoods and destinations around the world help us discover who we really are. Her books have been translated into over 20 languages, and her work has appeared in the Washington Post, CBS, New York Daily News, Good Morning America, Oprah Daily, and more. Amy lives with her wife and their very bad cat in New York City. Mark Williams is an award-winning playwright, essayist, and travel writer who has visited 47 countries across all 7 continents. In addition to writing for National Geographic, his work is published in newspapers and magazines in the U.S. and around the world, including the New York Times, Washington Post, HuffPost, Wired, Courier International, Time Out, The Globe and Mail, Thrillist, Salon, and Good Housekeeping. Out in the World is his first book. Mark lives in New York with his husband and their 15-year-old boy. So the format of today is going to be about 30 minutes of conversation, 15 minutes of Q&A, and then 15 minutes of assignment.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is so fun. This is our first West Coast, right?
Together, yeah.
Our West Coast debut together.
Mm-hmm.
We're very happy to be here. I used to live in Los Angeles, so it's been fun returning home, although it will be less than 24 hours that I'm here, but I'm seeing all the things and eating all the things that I miss. And yeah, thank you, everybody, for coming out. So Mark and I usually have a list of questions and we go through questions, and we thought, we're in California, we should be chill. And then we found out it's going to be live stream. We're like, it's going to be so relaxed. We don't need to but I did take some notes. And so, this book is such a special book for us and for so many people in the community. And we are just over the moon. It's been out a few months now, but every time we see it, when we came in, Mark said, I forget sometimes that we did this.
Yeah.
And when we're at events, it's just so special to remember that we did it and that we did it together and that it's touched so many people. And so we're going to just go through our top questions that people ask us, which we always think are really funny, that these are the things people want to know about us. The first one, always, everywhere, is people want to know if we fought. Did we fight?
Yes.
Mark, how did we fight?
Well, one of the things we thought about is Amy, being a native Californian, wanted California in every chapter of the book.
Because it deserves to be in every chapter of the book, right? It's so great.
And I said, I love California too, but it isn't out in California, Amy. It's out in the world.
That gives me an idea for a new book.
Right. And in turn, I love the UK, and I wanted the UK in every single chapter in this book. And Amy's like, nope, you get 2 or 3 UKs. And I was like, okay, you get 2 or 3 Californias. And then the compromise was Iceland, because we both love Iceland. And we were like, the book should just be everyone go to Iceland, the end.
Yeah. Iceland is our, there are over 120 destinations in this book. And we painstakingly had to decide not only what destinations went in the book, but then which destinations went in each chapter. So, and for every chapter we said, well, we could put Iceland here. Well, we could put Iceland here. So we always agreed on Iceland, which sustained our relationship. Iceland was just the place that we thought could go in every chapter.
Right.
So we fought. Mark says we fought. We didn't really fight. We fought a little about California versus the UK, but we made it work. I think there's 3 of each or something.
Yeah.
And California is well represented, so nobody needs to worry.
Right. And I wasn't sure how I was gonna, because it's my first book, but it's also my first time I've co-authored with someone, and I wasn't sure how it would work. But I'm so I just love us. I'm sorry, but we are so, the way we work together was so harmonious, and we timed our freakouts so that I would freak out early in the development, and then Amy would have her freakouts later. So it was perfect timing. It was all the balance. And interestingly enough, we never this book took about 9 months to write.
Yeah.
And we maybe one of those 9 months we were in the same time zone. There was a time when I was in Finland and Amy was here in California, and we were figuring it out, and it all just seemed to work out.
We had a big time difference in
Yeah.
between us.
Yeah. So
Okay, so the next question people ask us is, how did we figure out what went in the book? And you already heard it was painstaking. We got asked by National Geographic to put about 50% of US destinations in the book and 50% international destinations. So we were able to split them up that way. And then we really wanted to give people sort of a huge variety of experiences. And the book, for those of you who have already read it or have it, is organized via experience or theme versus geography.
Right.
We felt like nobody ever goes, I feel like going to the Northwest for vacation. We really, I think in this, especially this Instagram-able world, we're really into vibes. And so we know what vibe we want. And so we really organized the book and the destinations via vibe.
Yeah, we thought it would be a fun and more playful way to use the book, and also like tap into the way people are traveling. Like you said, nobody wakes up and says, I want to go to the Northeast or Northwest. They say, oh, I want a beautiful beach, or, I want to do something that's like incredibly haunted, or where can I go to eat great food? So we thought doing it by theme would open it up a lot more and make it a little bit more fun and playful and user-friendly.
And more fun to write too.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. This is Mark's first book, but it's my something book, maybe fifth book or something. And I realized again, as we wrote this, the book doesn't just need to be entertaining and engaging to read. It needs to feel like that as a writer, because if you aren't, your spirit is so part of the book. I'm going to go very LA woo-woo here for Mark, probably, but your spirit is so part of every book. And with my books, my readers often say, oh my gosh, it's like Anna's saying she knows my books. It's like it's your voice. And so I think this book came out so good in part because it was so fun to write and decide which destinations went where.
Yeah.
And Mark and I, many of them the chapters we wrote together, but then there were some chapters where Mark didn't want to touch the chapter.
The foodie one.
Yeah.
And like, I want nothing to do with the food.
And I was like, I'll do the food chapter. I'll make sure nobody gets hangry, which is what the chapter is about.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to have anything to do with the nature chapter. I was like, don't send me off the grid. I can't. Like, that's not for me. And so Mark did all the animals and the nature. And where you see food, you can thank me for that.
Yeah. And you didn't want the haunted either.
I didn't want the haunted.
No.
I didn't want the haunted.
I was like, give it to me. Bring it on.
Because I like woo-woo, but I don't like to be scared.
Actually, California plays into how we first met too a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We met in New York through a who would become a mutual writing teacher with us, the great Susan Shapiro. You were
Hi, Susan, if you're watching.
Yeah, hi, Susan. You were on her panel, and you had been in New York for like how many days?
24 hours.
24 hours. And Amy was there, and her memoir had just come out, and I was like, wow, like this is a really like smart, interesting author, and I want to go say hello. But I get so shy that I didn't even like know if I was gonna have like, anyway, I worked up the courage and we said hello, and we would become friends. And later I said to Amy, you made me really nervous. Like, I didn't really want to come up to you. Like, I don't know, that you were just something about you. You made me really nervous. And she goes, I don't make anybody nervous. I'm from California. I'm the friendliest person imaginable. And I'm like, well, I'm from New York. We don't like anybody. So.
And then I hugged Mark and I really terrified him.
Yeah, I was like, why are you touching me?
And the rest is history. So yeah. It was so funny because it was over a few years that we knew each other in writing classes and events that we decided to write a book together. So I had written books, but Mark had written more pieces in major publications on travel. And I really wanted to write, most of my books are self-help books, and then I have a memoir about my healing journey. I really wanted to move, not out of that space, but move a little bit more into another space and just write about something different. And Mark really wanted to write a book. Mm-hmm. And so in the publishing industry, do we have any writers here or would like to be writers? Yeah. Okay. So in the publishing industry, you need a combination of multiple things to be able to get a traditional publishing deal. You need experience, you need a platform, you need some clips, you need all these things. And between Mark and I, we made a whole person that had all the right things to write a travel book. Like I had the books, but I didn't have the travel piece. And Mark had the travel piece, but he didn't have the books. And so
I know, I was like, finally, I'm a complete person in
Yeah,
the publishing world
yeah.
because we're here together.
Yeah. And so it was really, really perfect that we were able to collaborate on this project. And I think that was part of what helped sell this book to National Geographic, was that we each had different pieces, and together, we were a whole publishing person.
We were a whole person.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that helped really sell it is, believe it or not, when we started pitching this book in 2022, there was no LGBTQI plus travel book at all, which sounds insane now.
Yeah.
But we were planning trips with our spouses, and we realized that there was the information out there was so lacking. Like if there was a queer section, it was in the back of a book, and it said, go to this hotspot, go to this bar, go to this club and party. And that's great. That's great for a lot of people. It was great for me when I was 25, but like I wanted to know where I can go antiquing with my husband, because now I'm 45 and clubbing is not for everybody. So we decided to write our own book that would tell people how to do that.
Yeah. And Charlotte and I always want to go out to foodie. Like that's the one thing, is we can't go to a place that doesn't have good food. So we discovered that, we have two rules. It has to have as good or better food than we have at home, than our restaurants at home, which is hard to beat because we live in New York City. And it also has to have better weather. When we first moved to New York, we went, Mom, do you remember, was it February, to Boston? We went to Boston because we thought that would be cute. That was the first place.
In March, you went to Boston?
Well, we didn't know. I'm from California. And it was the wrong choice. So Charlotte and I got married just outside of Boston. And so we thought that would be cute to go back to Boston. And we took my mom, and we soon realized that you should never go to a destination in the winter that is by far worse than your own weather. It was like 10 degrees worse, I think. And we were like, what is this? So over time, we sort of figured out the food has to be as good or better, and the weather too.
Right.
And so this book is such a reflection of all of the places and things that we want to do and where we want to go and where we have been. People ask us, did you go to all the destinations? And the answer is pretty much yes.
Yeah.
There were a few destinations if we hadn't been there for a while.
Yeah, if we hadn't been there in a while, we found people who have, that we trusted. Like we didn't just want to write like a Google book, because anyone can type in a place and do their own research, but we really wanted to go deep as you can in 600 words for each place, but provide the most details as we possibly could. And we also, like, every chapter, every entry that we do has something called the LGBTQI plus lowdown. So we wanted to show, why a particular place is especially friendly, or maybe it hasn't been so much, but it's making great progress, or maybe there's an element to it where you still need to use some caution. And, we felt it wouldn't be authentic if we just did that based on internet research. Like, really wanted to do like on the ground research for every place we wrote about.
And the other thing that was really important to us was that it be queer friendly and inclusive, but that should not define the destination. Because I don't know about any of you, but when we go to a destination, we don't go for parades. And, that may be part of what we do, but that's not why we go to a place. And we always say we both travel with our mothers. And so this book has passed the litmus test, which is, can you take your mother to every destination? And we're proud that we could take our mothers to every destination in this book.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, like, is this book for straight people too?
Oh yeah, that's a question. Is it for straight people, Mark?
Of course, it's for everybody. One of the things we realized is that, like, me and my straight friends love to go to the same places. In fact, a lot of my female friends would always tell me, like, I like going to a place, say, like Provincetown, that's very gay because, I feel safe there. So we were asked, specifically when we were in our meeting trying to sell a book, like, straight people have their own book. Why should we include them here? And it's because we want an inclusive approach.
Yeah.
Like, the world is getting more and more inclusive, which is great. And, um, if a place is LGBTQI plus owned, more often than not, like, everybody's welcome to stay there, and we really wanted a book where everybody could feel welcome, like the places we write about.
Yeah, and I think that was our intention. But I think as we wrote and as we talked about the book more, we started really realizing the impact of these places. When a place is LGBTQIA plus inclusive, it's also safer for women traveling alone. It's safer for older people. It's safer for children. Those places tend to be safe havens for more for different communities.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a straight person, traveling with children or traveling with your mother or traveling with, whoever, those places are safer. They're just more inclusive of everyone. And so we feel extra proud that we put out a book that is just where the destinations are inclusive in nature.
Yeah, that we do include some places that are surprising
Yeah.
or historically not as LGBTQI plus friendly, or on paper, homosexuality is still considered a crime. So do you want to talk a little bit about why we decided to include places like that in the book?
Yeah. So, I mean, this was so interesting because this is one of the things I warned Mark about with his first book. I said, people will be unhappy. It doesn't matter. We're going to get people, we didn't put a few places in just because we couldn't fit every place in. We're going to get hate mail from people. Why didn't you put my place in? Why? And then the people, why did you? Why didn't you? And so, one of the things was that we really wanted to put in places where we felt comfortable. We got some questions about some of the international destinations, and Mark and I really felt like in today's day and age, if we just go by the laws or just go by the politics, we're going to sadly cut out a lot of the US. So we can't discriminate against an entire population because of the politics or the government. And so that was one of the things that we decided to do, is if we felt safe there, if we had traveled there and we felt safe there, then we decided to put it in. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and we don't think it's our role to like boycott a place or tell you we make suggestions about where we think are great places to go, but we want everyone to make their own personal choices, which is why we have 120 destinations in the book. And there are places like Morocco, where on paper homosexuality is considered a crime, but in Marrakesh, me and my husband, who were openly gay there, were treated so kindly, and the people there were so warm. And I realized in that moment, like, you cannot, I can't say don't go to a place because of the laws, because the people don't necessarily reflect the laws. Or, another place is like the Maldives. Again, it's homosexuality is considered a crime, but you go to a resort and a lot of them are very welcoming, and the resorts will employ people who are openly LGBTQI plus, who have moved from places where they would be like severely persecuted. So I don't think it's a cut and dry approach. And I think that if we only limited to places that were historically LGBTQI plus friendly and popular, we'd have way less choices. And part of the thing we want to do with the book is empower more choices, right?
Yeah, I think, it was really important for us to be careful about this. I mean, anytime you put anything in print, I mean, the night before any of my books come out, I just want to take them back, because the fear of you're going to say something. I mean, this happens every time. And it's like the night before, it's like, didn't I think of it? Like, this is what the whole point is, that everyone's going to read it. And then the night before, I start overthinking every, thing possible. But we really did want to also give credit where credit is due in terms of places where they have made so much progress. So I remember when my wife and I got married 12 years ago, we wanted to go to Morocco for a honeymoon.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife has always been gay, and she was the first woman I ever dated. So it was really interesting for me to come into the community as someone who literally never thought anything about it. It was really interesting. And I said to my brother, this was 13 years ago. I said, I think we should go to, Marrakesh. And he said, you can't go there. And I was like, why not? And he was like, well, you can go there, but you shouldn't hold hands. And I was like dumbfounded. It was really of course, as a woman, I always think about certain things, but this was sort of a new level for me. And so it's sort of interesting, because now that's a place we can go, and we're planning on going. And so even though on the books or on paper, a place may not be safe, a lot of places have made so much progress in the last decade. I don't think a decade ago or 5 years ago, I don't think we could have filled this book in the same way.
No, and it's great to see. I mean, how many people would think like Arkansas, parts of Arkansas or parts of Kentucky would be, or Utah would be, LGBTQI plus friendly, but in Louisville, Kentucky, there are pride flags everywhere. Same thing in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Like even in every red state, there's like pockets of inclusivity, and it's been amazing to see and experience.
So should we talk about some of our favorites in case any travelers out here want to add to their bucket list?
Sure.
So it's so funny, every time my favorites change. It's just like whatever the favorites are today. So I'll start with a few of my favorites. So one of my favorites, which was such a big surprise, was Hill Country in Texas, outside of Austin. Has anybody been? Very LGBTQIA plus friendly. My wife and I went to Austin, which was a great trip. But then we took a road trip outside of Austin and went to the old music halls and had barbecue. And you wouldn't think the countryside in Texas would be the most friendly place. But there are several, it's in the book, and there are several B&Bs and retreats that specialize in queer weddings. And it was just a really beautiful, welcoming place. So that's one that comes to mind. Ojai, California, which I am biased about because I was born there, is one of my favorite destinations. I'm going to say one California.
I know.
I have to be careful with my California love here, but I don't.
Kidding.
I'm amongst these people. These people will
know.
Protect me, Mark.
I know.
So Ojai, California, where I had a really hard time, we did the LGBTQIA plus lowdown, which is why is this place friendly? And I asked a couple people in Ojai, and they said, well, we don't even, everyone's just out here. We wouldn't even think twice about anything. Like we wouldn't even have a welcoming motto or anything, because everybody's just out. And that has been like that for a really, really long time. Savannah, Georgia is one of my absolute favorite destinations. Has anybody been to Savannah? One of the most special places. I always say Savannah is one of the few places that when you get there, it looks like what you were promised. It looks exactly like every postcard you ever saw, or everything you ever saw about Savannah. And it's just as charming and just as wonderful and just as all the things.
But what didn't you know about it when you went?
Which I'm glad about. I didn't know how very, very haunted it was. My mom would like that. She would like that. So Mark took that chapter because it's in the haunted chapter. But
yeah, Amy was like, Mark, I need a place to go that's like a 2-hour flight from New York, and it's got to be cute. It's just got to be cute, and the weather has to be nice.
And it was in April.
And it was in April. She's like, where can I go? And I want to be there for like 3 days. And I was like, well, Savannah's perfect, but it's haunted. But I just won't tell her it's haunted.
I didn't learn until we wrote this book. And I was like, why is Savannah in the haunted chapter? And Mark and I, no matter who wrote the chapter, we edited each other's work. Yeah. And I literally remember giving Mark the note. We were really open to each other's feedback. I said, Mark, there are too many people who were hung, stabbed, or shot in this chapter. I said, it's traumatizing. We can't have that. And I made him cut out a lot of murder details. So you're welcome, everybody who reads the Savannah chapter before bed. So, okay, and then a couple of international destinations. Venice, Italy, my top destination. I think we've been there 4 times, and it doesn't get old. I mean, it gets more touristy every time, but it doesn't get old. And then Iceland, as we've said, and then Austria. Salzburg was one of the biggest surprises of all of my travels. The most beautiful, charming, inclusive, just beautiful city.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark.
All great choices. It's tough to follow.
Yeah. You've got yours.
Let's see. Internationally, I'm a big fan of Sydney. Who's been to Sydney? Like, I feel like Melbourne gets all the love, and people tell me all the time, like, you're from New York, don't go to Sydney, it's not cultured and it's stupid and people are idiots. I love Sydney. I felt like a place, you can go to the beach, it's like 30 minutes from the city. People were friendly and nice and cultured, and I probably would live there if it weren't so far from my family. I love Curacao. A lot of people say go to Aruba, and Aruba gets lots of love, but Curacao, also part of the ABC Islands, I felt like you can just drive around and go from beach to beach, and it was totally chill. And like the downtown area was a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the buildings, I'm colorblind, so I didn't fully appreciate what the buildings look like.
I had to tell Mark how pretty our book was because
Yeah.
they gave us the book cover in 3 different colors. And I said, which color did you like? And he said, I don't know.
Yeah. I was like, Amy, just tell me what you want, because I don't know. And let's see, the third one. Antarctica. I mean, yes.
She's been to a few of our countries.
She knew it was coming, but I do love Antarctica, which is a journey. It's quite the trip, but it's one of the most magical, most serene places I've ever been to. And of course, there's a story involved. I don't know how much time we have. Should I just tell the abbreviated story?
Tell the abbreviated story.
I should have
I'm only keeping us on time because that's my couple more minutes.
When I was a kid, I couldn't travel because I had leukemia, and I just wanted to go to Disney World. And my parents would bring in National Geographic magazines and keep my wanderlust going. And they would say, Disney World is great, but there's a whole big world out there. Where do you want to go? And then one time there was this big story on Antarctica, and I loved penguins and I wanted to go there. And then when I got healthier, like we didn't have the money to travel, but like 35 years after being sick, I met a guy whose profile picture on OkCupid had pictures of Antarctica. And I messaged him right away, and I was like, I don't really want to know about you, but like, I want to know about this trip. Hi, Michael, if you're watching. And we started talking, and we went on a date, and I was like, I was so enamored, and I was like, tell me about Antarctica. I really want to go, and blah, blah, blah. And the details were incredible. And he was like, I'd go back with you. And I was like, this guy is full of crap. It's like first date flirting. Lo and behold, we got married, and it was time to plan our honeymoon. And it was like, where are we going? And the answer was Antarctica. And it was an incredible trip. But I realized when I was there, like it was the first, I love to plan when we're traveling. I had no control. I had to go wherever the boat or the weather took me. And I realized in that moment that the last time I felt not this much in control was when I was sick. And I realized that I was carrying a lot of like PTSD from my childhood illness, and how important travel had become in terms of not just going somewhere to check off a box or it was very much healing for me. And that's when I realized just the weight of what travel can bring.
Yeah, so healing. And I think so many things intersect when you travel. One of the things when we're asked travel tips, we each have our own travel tips. And my number one tip, which my wife has finally come around to after this long, is just wander. I'm like a wanderer. Like she has a list and I'm like, how many do I have to go to? Because it's not for me. My mom travels with us a lot and we're like done at a museum in about 30 seconds. And my wife's still reading the first thing 3 hours later. So there's different personalities. But one of the things that I think, Mark has experienced, especially there, is just to give yourself over to that place. And that's when the magic can happen because we think we go somewhere for something, but it gives us what we need. And the only way to do that is not pack your day so full that you can find that unexpected magic in wherever you go.
Yeah. And it's also like travel is, I feel like it's so important. And it doesn't have to be like you don't have to go very far. But like we all deal with a lot of stuff on our day-to-day lives. And for example, like maybe you've become somebody's caretaker. The minute you go to a new place when you're alone or with somebody else, you're not that person's caretaker. In that moment, you could reinvent yourself 100% and be whoever you want to be. And I feel like sometimes it takes changing the location just for our mind to reset and do that. So I love travel for that reason too.
I just found out, this is a little bit of a side note, but about resetting. We have a cat. When we moved, this is on brand, on theme.
Is this woo-woo?
This is on theme and it's not woo-woo.
Okay.
That our cat used to go outside in the backyard. And when we recently moved in New York, we had to move the cat and make the cat indoor. And I took him to the vet recently and she said, how's he doing? And I said, he's actually fine. I don't think he remembers that he used to go outside. And I was so worried. She said, that's a really interesting thing about cats. Their brains reset in a new environment. She said, that doesn't happen to dogs. And I said, I wish it happened to us. But it does a little bit with travel. You hear that people will say, I was the friendliest version of myself or the most relaxed version of myself. That's not always because we're on vacation. That's because our brains think differently and we feel differently and we move in the world differently when we are out of those confines that you're talking about. So most of us, including me who has a cat and loves a cat, I don't want to be more like my cat, but in this way, that is really amazing about travel, is that your brain does, you're just different and it's good.
Yeah.
It's good. So does anybody have any questions? We're going to sign, but yes.
Sorry.
No?
What is woo-woo?
Oh, okay.
There are several references to it.
Yeah. So woo-woo is, I would say, a little spiritual. I have my most woo-woo friends here, and they're right? Like a little spiritual, is that how you would?
Yeah.
Not quite spiritual, though. It's a little more like verging into like psychic, intuitive, kind of like energy stuff. So like a little more.
Not you, though. You're not. Nothing.
Oh, I've dragged him a little.
She has made me one woo. I'm not quite
like
on the
4.
woo.
I'm like woo. I've gone.
But I'm more woo than I've ever. And woo woo was like I've heard the term before, but like I tease her about like, don't give me your like woo woo California crap right now. Like I want to be in my New York jaded lane right now. Like but. So yeah, that's. But I mean, it's a legitimate thing that I respect. It's just like sometimes it goes like against everything that my New Yorker like attitude believes in.
Would you say woo for my California? It's like a little bit like believing everything's going to work out perfectly, and like things have good energy or bad energy, and you need to like a
reason for everything.
That kind of.
There's no coincidences.
Yes.
Aligned.
So it's like spiritual, but it's a little bit beyond that.
I think it's funny that he's not the woo-woo, but he's the one with all haunted and the ghosts and all that.
But I think haunted is like in a different category almost.
There's no murder in woo woo, right?
No.
There's no like headless.
That's why I was jarred by that chapter. That's why I was. No, if we wrote a chapter on what hotels had the best energy, I would have been fully supported. I would no edits.
Okay.
So like we wrote about Sedona, Arizona with the vortex. Like the vortex. That's kind of like woo-ish energy. That's a great question.
And I drank the Kool-Aid in Sedona. Like I went to the vortex and I was like, I feel different, and I was like, maybe because I walked up this stupid ass mountain without any water, and now I'm just dizzy.
Yeah. So he's not woo-woo. That's a great question. Does anybody else have a question about the book, about places? Yes.
This is maybe like a publishing process.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned you would freak out early in the process of writing, and you were freaking out later. And you talked a little bit about, Amy, what you were nervous about near the end.
Yeah.
So can you guys talk about, is that maybe too personal?
No.
Okay.
Mark, what did you freak out about most?
I mean, people say like, what's some of the most surprising things about writing this book? And it was the fact that I could write a book. You know, I was used to writing 1,000 or 2,000 word articles. And then I would have the theme of the article in the end. But to write, how many words is this? Like 70,000?
A lot.
To write at least half of the 70,000 on the same topic was a really daunting process for me. And I got nervous that I like wouldn't hold up my end of the bargain.
It's really interesting. So the teacher we mentioned, Susan Shapiro in New York, she teaches a lot on writing pieces, writing articles that are 800 to 1,200 words.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny. I panic about the thought of writing something like that. A lot of people write a lot of articles and will just like do a couple a week or whatever. I would rather like completely overwhelm myself with a book. I feel so much more secure in that process. And so I felt more comfortable, I think, about the book writing process, but I get nervous toward the end where it's like people are going to read it. Again, I don't know what I think when I write a book. Of course, people are going to read it, and it's not good if they don't. So I want them to. I think one of the other things is I wasn't sure how I would be as a collaborator. I definitely have my mother's blood. I like to do it my way, and I like to do it myself, and I don't think I need help, and I probably don't need help. And so I have never chosen, outside of having to collaborate with somebody, I have never chosen to do a project because I would just rather do it myself. That's why I own my own business. That's why I just feel like I'm good by myself. And so I was nervous about it, but doing this with Mark added so much. I learned so much. We communicate in very different ways. I'm like very quick and Mark's very thoughtful. Thank God this book would be half the size if it was up to me. But I was nervous about how that would process would go. I'm also a people pleaser. I don't like anybody to be mad at me. So I think I was nervous about that aspect. And as we got closer to a deadline, I mean, you never have enough. People will say, how long does it take to write a book? Exactly however long you have. That's the end of the story. Like anybody who's in the creative world knows, if you have a deadline, it's done by that deadline. If you don't, it takes 30 years. Mm-hmm. So I was nervous about the deadline. We, had a lot to write, a lot to coordinate. And I think we both freaked out a little bit when it came out because you want it to do well. You want it to sell well. I know we have some people in TV and film here. You want the thing that you love so much to be received so well by everybody. And so that was a little bit of a freak out too. Anybody else? Yes, Carl.
Was there a destination that you guys, either together or independently, really wanted to be a fantastic out destination? And then when you got down to it, you went, oh, gosh. And so it's not in the book, curiously?
We have a whole cut list that's not in the book, Carl. So we're going to have to share that with you after. But was there any?
You really thought you thought, like, this is a no-brainer. This is somewhere that should be so accepting and so wonderful. And then it sort of just fell a bit flat for you.
Did we have any of those? Oh. I don't remember any particular ones.
I think there were places where I feel like, we went, and then it wasn't as so there's a place in North Carolina, and it was pitched to me to visit and very as being very LGBTQI plus friendly. And I went and I was like, that's okay. And it was a place that was, and I'm not going to name it by name because we're going to be able to all figure it out, but it's one of the biggest cities in North Carolina. And it was incredibly racist. not making the cut.
Yeah.
If you're LGBTQI plus friendly, but you're racist, nope,
Yeah.
you're not in our book. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah,
You
and
mentioned, you touched on something earlier, and I was interested about this process. So you said that there was, 9 months where you were never in the same time zone, right?
Yeah.
So like, when you were figuring out how this was all gonna work, did you make was there a roadmap? Like, we're gonna all travel for 9 months, or we're gonna do, was there a roadmap like that where each of you, or was it something that just came up, oh, by the way, I learned about this, now we're gonna go here. So what was that process of figuring out how you were going to go to places and communicate and stuff?
we did a lot. We had been to so many places before we started writing. And then we both traveled a little bit while we were writing. And we we naturally divvied it up really well. It would be like I had been to the place and Mark hadn't, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And so we were mostly writing over those 9 months. We were also traveling, and some places were getting added, some places were getting swapped out as we went to places and went, oh, maybe not. But we sort of did it more casually. We had a terribly, horribly messy, especially for a Virgo, Google Doc. It was terrible.
I think our outline was longer than the book.
Yeah, my heart sinks when I think about how messy it was. But we worked from that.
And you color coded everything.
Yes.
To someone who's colorblind.
I didn't know. I didn't know at first. I didn't know. And then I kept doing things and Mark kept saying, still can't see your highlighting. And I was like,
she's like, don't you see the yellow? I'm like, Amy, I see no yellow. I see, it all looks gray to me.
But I didn't want to have as a perfectionist to have all caps on some and bold on other. I was trying to we couldn't put some in Spanish. I was trying to figure out how to differentiate everything, and I color code things in my book. So
yeah,
we sort of it was a more casual process for sure, and it definitely just kind of worked out.
It did. Yeah, it was great.
Yes, Jill.
You said there's a cut list, so is there an out in the world part 2?
We hope so.
Yeah, we
hope
hope so.
There's many out in the world parts.
And we are so grateful to all of you for being here because every sale of this book helps us get us there.
Yes. So I was going to give my thing that only I would say, which is no pressure to buy books, but please buy as many as you can. The reason is, one, if there's someone to give this book as a gift to, it is such a great gift to say, I hear you, I see you, I accept you for who you are. At my last event, I had a grandmother of a trans child come up and say, I've never known how to show this child I accept them, but giving them this book is what I needed. I didn't have the language. And so it is really important. And I know, Mark, you've had experiences like that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, Zibby's bookshop is fantastic. I met Zibby a few years ago. I was on her podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read, for my memoir, This Is How I Saved My Life. And we realized we lived across the park from each other. And I had moved from LA and was overwhelmed by the literary community in New York City. It was a dream come true for a writer, because when I lived in LA, there wasn't, or I didn't know where to find a literary community. And this bookshop is so special, not only because it has Zibby's touch and energy on it, and she really, for anybody who knows Zibby, she excels at everything she does over and above and beyond. But also this, I feel like when I look online, I think, when I see the Instagram post, she brought a literary community to LA. This bookshop is really special. And I see writers come here and writers speak here. And so anything we can do to support the bookshop, we're just so thankful to be here.
Agreed.
So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah. We're going to sit up here and sign books. If you have more questions, we'll be here. And thank you so much, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.